The median home price in the Seattle area has risen faster than most of the US over the last 12 months. Let's talk about it. As always, I'm Bryce Greenleaf, local real estate broker here in the greater Seattle area. Love helping you guys out, those of you that reach out to me here when you're looking to buy a home or sell a home in this area. Don't hesitate to reach out at my link below if there's anything I can do to help. I want to talk about the current state of our real estate market as well as projections for 2025 and what we should expect going into the new year. But before we can talk about what may come in the future here in 2025, let's discuss what happened this year and where we ended up. So as I mentioned, the Seattle area as a whole here had a much higher rise in median home prices than most of the US did. In the US as a whole, home prices went up by about 3.4% in the last 12 months. Here in the Seattle area, it's a little bit higher. In King County, those prices went up from $878,000 to $948,000. That's about 8% increase in those annual median home values in King County. In Snohomish County, it's a similar story, up from $725,000 to $769,000. This is up 6% in those median home values. So while we saw a lot of markets across the US really struggle to gain any equity, some markets actually went backwards and had a drop in those median home values, median home prices. That was very common throughout a lot of places in the US, but here in Seattle, that was not the case. There's a few reasons for that, and we'll talk about that here coming up on this video. Now, really the other stat that I think is super important that we look at, that we can see what happened this year and what we may be able to expect moving forward, is the amount of new listings, new inventory coming on the market on a month-by-month basis. Here in 2024, we stayed relatively equal with what we saw in 2023. Most months in King and Snohomish County had an increase of around 5%, as high as 10% in some months in the amount of new homes coming up for sale, but nothing drastic, typically closer to around 5% or less in an increase in inventory by month. Now, of course, that's good to see an increase, but it's not the increase that maybe we'd like to see or that we would want. When we look at pre-pandemic inventory levels and the amount of new listings we saw come on the market month by month before all this craziness started in 2020 and really shifted the whole real estate market, we're down about 20 to 25% on a month-by-month basis in both King and Snohomish County for the amount of new listings coming on the market since 2019. Now, if we look at the total amount of home sales in the US over the last decade or two, there's an interesting trend that we saw. Last year in 2023, we finished with about 4 million, just under 4 million home sales in the US. That was the lowest number of home sales since the market crash 2008, 2009. Now here in 2024, we're going to finish, it looks like, just over 4 million. So a little bit of an increase in those home sales, but still nothing compared to where we were like in 2021 when we had 6 million home sales in the US. So we're a far cry from that market and the hecticness of the market that we saw mid 2020 to middle of 2022. Now, if you look at the projections here, they think the home sales in the US are going to be closer to 5 million as we get through 2025. Of course, we'll see what actually happens. It's so difficult to predict exactly what's going to happen in the real estate market, but this is one projection. Now, here over the last year in the Seattle area specifically, we've seen an interesting market, and it's been super specific to each individual area. Now, I've given you the stats for King and Snohomish County as a whole, and as we were earlier in the spring this year, we saw a lot of activity in a lot of the areas in most markets here in the Seattle metropolitan area. As we've gotten into the second half of 2024 here, we're seeing a bit of a change in some of these markets, specifically up north in Snohomish County. The north side of Snohomish County has slowed down quite a bit compared to what we saw earlier this year. It's taking homes a little bit longer to sell. Now, when I say slowed down quite a bit, comparatively speaking to what we've been used to over the last 4 to 5 years. However, in places like on the east side in Bellevue, Kirkland, Redmond areas, we're still seeing a number of houses getting 3 to 5 to, I even was in a transaction last month, about 3 weeks ago, where a home got 20 offers in Redmond. So those deals are still somewhat happening on that east side there, but not really happening in a lot of other locations. Now let's talk about what we may be able to expect for 2025. The National Association of Realtors just recently put out his prediction for what we'll see in 2025. He thinks we'll see about a 9% increase in the number of home sales happening across the US. This is the whole US, not just Seattle. And in terms of those prices, he thinks median prices are going to go up by about 2%. nationally. Now, of course, like we referred back to earlier, when we saw a national increase in home prices last year of 3.4%, the Seattle area was double to triple that in King and Snohomish County. So if I'm looking at our Seattle market specifically and trying to figure out what I think may happen in 2025, here are kind of my thoughts. I think as we roll into the new year, we get into January, February, March, I don't think we're gonna see much of a drastic change in what the market currently is. I think we'll go back to our typical seasonal spring, really ramping up period like we'll see in most years. Now, do I expect home prices to jump up by 20, 30, 40% next year like we saw in 2021, 2022? I really don't. I don't see that really happening, especially with the projection of interest rates likely staying in the 6% range, 6 to 6.5%. Currently, rates average 30-year fixed is 6.92% right now. So we're not really getting a bunch of improvement on these rates like maybe we thought we were going to. So if we go through 2025, and a lot of the predictions have us finishing the year 2025 in the low 6% range, you know, we're not going to have a huge drop in those rates that would cause a very large increase in the amount of demand and amount of buyers hitting that market. So I think that's going to taper back the expectations a little bit on how much those home values could actually rise. Now, will home values rise? Absolutely. I think that is certainly the case. I don't see any scenario in which we see a drop in prices. As again, we are still seeing an increase in prices even this year when nationally a lot of markets did not. We still saw 6 to 8% between King and Snohomish County, and I would likely expect more of the same in 2025. I think as we get into spring, like I said, April, May, June, into summer in the busiest buying and selling season, I would expect the market to get pretty active again. I think we'll start to see return of bidding wars like we did this previous spring, and there'll be more competitive situations, but nothing so insane like we saw in 2021 and 2022. But just be prepared if you're somebody looking to enter the market and you're trying to time the market. One, it's almost impossible to time the market, but I would not plan for home prices to drop. I know everybody likes to talk about they're sitting on the sidelines until those home prices drop and then they will jump in. I don't think you're going to see that at all. I think home prices will steadily increase through next year, whether that's 5 or 10%. I think that's a very realistic range in the increase in median home values through the year. All right, well, hopefully this one was helpful for you. Like I said, I love helping those of you that are looking to buy or sell real estate here in the Seattle area, whether you already live here or you're someone looking to relocate over here. Feel free to click one of the links in my description down below to schedule a call with me, or simply just call me at the number down there or shoot me a text. Would be more than happy to help out with your home buying or selling plans. Thanks for watching this one.